Hello there, and today we're going to be talking about Planet Zoo, or should I say Planet Zoo 2. As a matter of hours ago, Frontier officially dropped their, celebration for 6 years of Planet Zoo. Planet Zoo came out, 6 years ago. It's the 6th anniversary. But instead of getting a new animal like we usually get, and have gotten in the past, we got something so much better. We got confirmation of a sequel for the game, and I am beyond thrilled. This was just incredible news, and it's made me, so happy, because I love this original game. I've been playing it since 2020, in January, basically. I've consistently played it for almost 6 years, and it's incredible. It's been an incredible part of my life. So today, I'm going to talk about some wishes and wants that I have for a sequel to Planet Zoo 2, things I'm hoping we get confirmed, and a little bit about what we know. We don't know much, but I'll get into that in a minute. I'll start with the smaller section. What we know. We don't know much. But we know a little bit. At the end of the 6-year celebration video, it's like a 4-minute long video, Planet Zoo takes us through the years of DLCs, etc. That'll be on screen now for you all to look at. And by the end of it, we finish on this sort of Planet Zoo 2026. And if you ask me, that basically confirms that it's coming 2026. Which is 2 months away. Does that mean we're getting the game in January? No. But that does mean, from January to December next year, we're going to be getting it. Planet Zoo 2 is 13 months away, 14 months away, at the most. And that's incredible. But that's all we know. That is all we know. So we don't know much. But now, I'm going to talk about a little bit of my wishes and wants and hopes for a sequel. I'm going to start strong. Birds. Birds are the big one. Birds are the talking point. Birds are the thing. They're probably the most talked about thing for Planet Zoo 2. It was a little bit disappointing to not get flight birds by the end of Planet Zoo's lifespan. Which is what it is. We gotta get over that now. But surely we get birds for a sequel. Surely. They can't not include birds. The way I would like to see them integrated is give us sort of a modular system similar to what we have in Jurassic World Evolution. A similar modular system for our aviaries, or... yeah, I guess you can call them aviaries still. For our aviaries that way. But in a slightly different way. I would prefer to see them similar to the exhibit boxes. Now, not entirely, but in that same sort of format. We get maybe some different sizes that we can connect. So we can keep making it, we can make a really tall aviary, we can make a really wide aviary, or we can make a round aviary if we really wanted to. Or they can take it another way, which I don't know about game development, but I'm assuming is a little bit more difficult. And that is to sort of create a habitat. So you make your habitat, design it whatever shape you want. And then you can apply a setting which turns it into an aviary. Where if you've, maybe you've got it circled enough, you can get pitched roofs in the middle, so it kind of curves and is pitched, etc. Or you can just have it flat, like just a flat roof for the birds, so they can't fly up that high. They hit this mesh thing. And either in Sandbox or just in general, have a null setting so that we can make custom roofs like that. That is the way I'd prefer. Is, we make a square habitat, raise our barriers up, make them 10 meters tall, turn that setting on, boom, it becomes an aviary, we can put birds in there. Because it becomes natural, and we still get a lot of choice in it. And it also is semi-realistic. That's why I'd like to see it integrated. Now, what species would we get? Now, the thing about species for Planet Zoo, compared to Evolution 3, and Evolution 2 and, Jurassic World, there is a lot more animals that we know about than, dinosaurs, prehistoric animals, reptiles, etc. And there's a lot more of them, and there's a lot more really iconic, birds out there too. It's not a small genre. So it really becomes a question of, okay, how do they balance creating new game mechanics with bringing new species in? For birds, I think we need to see at least 10, is my standpoint. And we need to see roughly parts of the same category. We need to see a vulture, we need to see an owl, we need to see some sort of parrot species, we need to see a toucan, is a big one for me. We definitely need to see some smaller parrots. Just an example off the top of my head is like a budgie, or just, grey parrots, etc., something like that, macaws. That's what we should see. We should definitely see barn owl. It's something I would like to see, just any owl species in general, to be honest. We definitely need to see a vulture. I would love to see a vulture. Californian condor is another one that I would actually really like to see. We also need to see some eagle species. Bald eagle, I know, are incredibly common in the US, less so in other parts of the world, but they are common in the US, bald eagles. And some other more lesser bird species, like secretary bird, pelican species. But we need a good variety, and I'm going to be really interested to understand and learn and, discover how they're going to balance this when they start announcing it. I don't think we're far off some more confirmation. I think within 1 to 2 months we will get an announcement trailer for the sequel, and hopefully that will give us more insight into how birds are going to function. But for now, I'm going to talk about the second biggest thing for the game. Fully aquatic mammals. How do they implement them? Well, it's simple in my eyes. We create a barrier, we fill that barrier up with water, we place an underwater habitat gate. Or we place an above water habitat gate that creates this sort of like... If you've ever seen the backstage of an aquarium, creates this sort of platform thing where the animal would get released, etc., or the staff would put them in. We would also need to see an aquatic keeper that could swim or something like that. But again, that's not going to work to implement. That's how they need to implement, setting aquariums up. And the other thing as well is animals. There's a lot more animals that they have to implement. And I can understand the struggle that they'd be facing about how do we not saturate the roster too much without undercutting, marine life. Because there's so many, incredible species out there. But you've got to have variety too. You can't just bring in 2 fish species, a shark, a sea turtle, a ray, an eel, manatee, whatever else. There needs to be a strong variety. You need to have probably at least 2 sharks, maybe at least 2 rays, a couple of fish, because there's a lot of fish species. So that's what, we kind of run into on that, and it creates a really interesting thought process about how Frontier are going to tackle that. The last thing I want to briefly mention, I don't want to talk about it for too long, is cetaceans and, porpoises, dolphins, whales, porpoises. What sort of path do they take with them? And I understand the controversy. I do. I am so heavily against any captive porpoises, any captive cetaceans. I am heavily against it. Orcas in the wild, dolphins in the wild, whales, what are they doing there? I'm heavily against it. But, in saying that, they are incredibly iconic, and I'm very thankful that I do not have to make that decision of, whether we include cetaceans or not. That decision's already been made. Guarantee it. But it's going to be interesting, because do we see orcas? Do we see dolphins? I don't know. Now, my third biggest want for the game. Animal retextures. It's no surprise to anyone that the Planet Zoo base game animals don't look as good as the latest DLC animals, or particularly the sort of high of DLCs. That's just an apparent fact. Look at the lion, or look at the wolf, the timber wolf, or look at the gorilla, or look at the cheetah and compare it to... Take the Timberwolf. You compare the Timberwolf from the base game and compare it to even the coyote that we just got. Or you compare the grizzly bear to the sun bear or sloth bear. That's just something it doesn't compare. The quality difference between those two is astronomical. And I think it's important to see that these species get redone and that these species get a new skin, basically, because something, like the really iconic animals that were in the base game don't hold up, and they don't hold up, and I use them less in spite of that. I typically use the newer animals in favor of the old animals. And that's, nothing against the base game animals, but they just don't look as good comparatively. When there's a better sub-genre or option out there, I tend to go with that one. And, that ends up being a little bit disappointing when there's something like the lion that I should want to use, but just kind of don't, because I'm not a big fan of the model and it does need to be updated. That's just my opinion on, that sort of situation. I really think that a lot of species need to come back with new models and some new updated textures. Which again is something that I'm interested about to, know what's going to happen with, because they have to add new species, whether that be fully aquatic birds or just other new species. They have to add them in general. And then if they're looking at 20 odd, 30 odd species that they have to retexture, the male, the female, and the juveniles for, it's a lot. And I can understand how that would be, a big job. So I'm interested to know how that's going to work out, because it's just what should happen. The lighting and sort of just graphics overall. Now, nothing against the graphics, and I don't think it is actually a graphical issue. What I think it is, it's, again, how the lighting system works in the game. Jurassic World Evolution 3 has come out around 2 weeks ago, and it has got an incredible lighting system. The lighting in that game is phenomenal. So I would love to see that just ported straight over to the sequel. I would love to see that, and I think that is something that we, desperately need a lot. Just really up that level again, and it's something that I will be very surprised if we don't see, considering as well that it was in Planet Coaster 2. Player interactions, and sort of the way that players interact with the animals in the game. That is something that I've seen quite a few people talk about. Because when you're coming at, the foundation for this game, which I'll say is Super Tycoon, there's a lot more personal engagement that you can have with your animals and that, and that's something that doesn't as well transfer well into Jurassic World Evolution 3. There's only a certain amount of engagement that you can have with your animals, so you can only build a certain amount of connection towards them. And that's kind of sad. But I feel like we desperately need, some more ways to connect with our animals differently and stronger as the player. And, experience them more. Put us into more engaging opportunities with them. First person mode where we can function. I would love to have the option to act as the staff. To act like a zookeeper. And, walk around and clean the habitat. That should be an option. You shouldn't have to do it, but it should be an option. And that's my opinion there regarding another thing that I would love to see. The path. To be honest, and to be blunt, the pathing system is not the greatest. But the pathing system that is in Planet Coaster 2 is phenomenal. I personally don't have my hands on the game, so I've personally never experienced that. But I have seen clips of it, and I know how it works. And oh my, it is like the greatest thing I've ever witnessed in my life. So I really hope, and again, I strongly think that we will get to see that in a sequel for Planet Zoo 2, or a sequel for Planet Zoo, and I hope that's the way it turns out. Now, the exhibit boxes, which might be one of the most hated things outside of the pathing system in the game. Again, I kind of like the exhibit boxes. I kind of do. They're kind of cool. But could they be improved? Yes. Should they be improved? Yes. So I hope they do get improved. Those animals should have animations. They should have, at the very least, looped animations. We should also expand those boxes to just be bigger and to be better. And by better, I mean give us more internal customization options and give us more variety of animals that we can put in there. We have lots of varieties of the similar animals, of snakes, spiders, bugs, beetles, etc. But we don't have many small mammals. And there are a lot of mammals that are, small enough to be in the exhibit boxes, but too small to still be in a habitat. I think the smallest thing we have in the game is the armadillo. The smallest habitat animal we have in the game. And yeah, it's, big, exactly. It's not suitable for an exhibit box. But something like a kangaroo mouse or other small rodents that I just, can't name at this time should be in the game. And they should be in these exhibit boxes. And it's, annoying that they're not. And that's something that they could just do to massively improve them. They have tried a little bit by giving the animals looped animations. I think that started with the bullfrog or the terrapin. I think it was the terrapin, because I think that DLC came first. But the terrapin started to have looped animations in the water. And that did help. It gave you visually something to look at. But it's still not enough. And they need to be reworked. To almost finish off things regarding terrain and that I would really like to see. Firstly, give us access to all the terrain paints on any map, or at least a wide variety of terrain paints. Because some maps just have completely different terrain paints that completely change the vibe of habitats. And I feel like temperate is probably the one that gets used the most, because it has the most variety of different terrain paints. It looks the most normal, zoo appropriate, in quotation marks, duh. But we should be able to build habitats that fit the theme a bit more. Because I really like the tropical soil on that and the tropical sand, and I'm a big fan of the desert sand. And not having those options just really limits how much variety we can give our habitats. Yes, it makes them look more coherent and cohesive across the entire zoo, but we still have to dial down that theming on that, and you can achieve that in other ways, but it won't look as good as just giving us the raw terrain paints. And waterfalls. We got waterfalls in Jurassic World Evolution 3 to be much easier than they are in Planet Zoo. They are in Planet Zoo. We can take our modular building pieces, our modular waterfall pieces, and our effects, and we can use them to create a waterfall. But 9 times out of 10, my waterfalls look really trash. And just compared to what Evolution 3 is able to do with waterfalls and how click, clack, there's your waterfall done, it is, we desperately need to see that. It's such an easy feature. And on top of that, the paint brushes, or the foliage and rock brushes in Evolution 3, I will add, should be in Planet Zoo. Because yeah, I do enjoy placing down my foliage a lot of the time. But there's also times where there's parts of the park that I don't want to sit around for, half an hour placing down rocks and trees to get it to look good. When I should just be able to brush over it in 30 seconds and bam, it's done. And lastly, just a couple species that are my most wanted in the game. A tree kangaroo species, the echidna, which is my most wanted animal. Why is it not in the game? Give me it. Walrus, and the secretary bird. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little speculation video, and I'll see you in the next one.